In this video, we're talking about how gamers are furious about the PS6 release date. Then we're going to talk about how the PS5 is losing a huge exclusive and it's all our fault. And finally, why is Sony making another live service studio that might actually work out? How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. Let's get into this first news story here because I know it's going to make people mad, but we have to talk about it because it's a really interesting situation that we're in this console generation. Now, a lot of gamers are calling this generation a wash, and it seems a little harsh at first, but when you look at how games are releasing these days, it's not difficult to really empathize with them and understand why they're feeling that way, because PS4 games are still coming out. There's less and less of them still coming out, but as usual, we get the PS4, PS5 cross-generational releases. You only save $10, but you can still play these games on your PlayStation 4. And if you're a PS5 owner, I'm speaking directly to you. I know exactly what that feels like, right? Like, you kind of feel a little bit like a sucker sometimes, where you show up day one, you give Sony money, you go through all the trouble to get a PS5 because I know it's far away at this point, but back when this thing came out, it was really damn difficult to get a PlayStation 5, and then they don't have the relationship working out reciprocally, right? Like, we give them money, we get a console, we do get something out of it, which is a better PS4 at the end of the day. We can run PS4 games at higher settings, but they're not supporting us the same way we're supporting them, right? Like, we bought this with the full intention of it being like the back half of the PS3 generation, most of the PS4 generation, where they were pushing boundaries. There were new games coming out multiple times a year, new franchises, new developers opening up, new studios being bought all the time. And they're definitely still buying new studios while they close other ones down, but the output from the first party has been nothing short of embarrassing this generation. We just gotta say it. And I'm speaking directly about PlayStation 5 exclusive games, because while Housemarque definitely gets an accolade from me for a game like Returnal, which truly feels next gen, if you look at something like God of War Ragnarok, it was an excellent game. It's one of my favorite first party Sony games of the past decade for sure, but it didn't really do much outside of what God of War 2018 did, right? Like, it expanded on the map of that game, it expanded on some of the combat, it expanded on the graphics just slightly, but it definitely feels like God of War 2018 sequel. It doesn't feel like the same revolutionary style of gameplay that we got with God of War 2018. Horizon Forbidden West is another game that released on the PlayStation 4, and I want to give Guerrilla credit on releasing an expansion that, you know, kind of pushed the PS5 to its absolute limit with the Burning Shores DLC, because that was not released on the PS4, and you see how great it runs and how great it looks. It kind of makes you wonder why they didn't put that effort in to get that game that good on the regular PlayStation 5, like for the base edition of the game, right? Like, Sony saw the tea leaves. They were like, we don't have enough PS5s out there to kind of recoup the massive budgets we're spending on these games, and that's their problem to solve. That's not our issue to deal with. I don't really care if Sony's spending too much money on games to not recoup them with the PlayStation 5. That's not a good enough excuse for me, because I bought a PlayStation 5 with the intention of getting games that use the hardware and push it to its limits, and as it's working out right now, the time we're going to get games that push the hardware is when the PS6 comes out. There's going to be cross-generational PS6 games. We're going to be in the exact same scenario we're in now, and people are going to be pissed, rightfully so. The reason this is all coming to a head right now, though, is because there's a ton of leaks and rumors out there from verifiable sources that Sony is pretty much wrapping up the PlayStation 5. There are a few games we're going to get, like Ghost of Yotei, of course, Death Stranding 2, maybe a couple in 2026, but going into the end of 2026, that's when we're going to see the direct support for the PS5 actually start to dry up, because they're working on getting the PS7 out in 2027. Now, there are a lot of factors you can blame for that. Of course, the Xbox is moving to a PC style platform with an overlay identical to the Steam Deck but running Windows, so inherently worse. They want to get their console out before Sony does, so that's probably going to release in the middle of 2027. And if that thing gaps the PS5 Pro, Sony does not like being in the back seat, especially considering they're the main hardcore console now. Like, if the Xbox really does shake out that way, it's not a competing console to Sony anymore. It's competing with other PCs, like the actual desktop console style PC Valve is working on. They're a third-party publisher for Sony at the end of the day, so they've got to have the most hardcore gamer-ready hardware that can compete with PC level tech, which is what they have with the PS5 Pro for right now. On the one hand, if you look at the raw numbers, 2027 makes a lot of sense. It's basically giving us a 7-year life cycle of this console. The reason that it feels so soon, though, of course, is what I was just talking about, which is that we don't have actual native PS5 games. And by 2027, we might have a few, but we're not going to have nearly the amount that we had during the PS4 generation. And I know the big fallback from defenders of this stuff is that games take longer to make, games are more expensive than ever, as if that problem cannot be solved. It easily can be solved. Stop making 50-hour games. Stop making 100-hour games. Make smaller games that focus on gameplay and actual innovation, and you'll get people to show up day one. There are 2 great examples of this year. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which is a 5-year development cycle game for sure, but it's not pushing the limits in terms of what something like Red Dead Redemption 2 did. And then you've got, of course, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. That is as small of a AA game as you can get. It maxes out at 35 hours. It runs in Unreal 5, so it looks great. It's got evolutions on the turn-based combat systems of games like Persona and old Final Fantasy. There aren't a lot of turn-based games coming out these days, and it's absolutely cleaning up. It sold around 4 million copies in just 2 weeks, and that makes sense because it looks and plays really damn good. Now, if you look at Sony's games, because of the budgets they have, 4 million copies would put the studio out of business. So what's the solve? Make smaller games that maximize graphics potential, maximize gameplay potential, and you can be done with in just a couple of weekends versus playing over 6 months. There's a weird converse issue here where like the PlayStation first party games take forever to make, but in between those games, you've got games coming out every freaking day, it seems. You've got indie games, you've got AA games, you've got third-party studios releasing AAA games. When you're releasing these massive experiences with your first party, you have to block off so many games to just finish them that I'd bet if you look at the trophies for a lot of Sony's first party games, the vast majority of people don't get anywhere near close to finishing them because there's always good stuff coming out. So you need to compete with the space that you're in, which is make smaller games, but make them feel, look, and run better than what the third parties are doing, which is what Sony's always done. I don't know why there's this massive push all the time to make games as big and long as possible when that's clearly not what people are asking for. Look at the situation Ubisoft is in. They made cookie cutter open world games that are 50 to 100 hours long, that have infinite content, and they have more player choice in the sense that they don't have an actual story, and no one's showing up to buy these games. So they're spending insane amounts of money to make these games, and no one's really asking for them, and they're not showing up to buy them. So I don't know when they're going to wake up and learn that that's the key, making shorter, more focused, more innovative games. But you've got studios like Sandfall Interactive figuring this out super easily, where the guy was bored at Ubisoft, he quit, he founded his studio, he found his composer on Reddit, and he mostly hired junior people from other studios and made a game that people are already calling Game of the Year 6 months in, and they don't think it's going to be beat. Like, the answer is right in front of Sony. So I don't think the PS5 generation is really salvageable in the way that I'm talking about, because even if you do what I just said, it's going to take a couple of years to actually make these games. They can bring people back. They've done it before in the PS3 generation. And of course, they have that massive digital library holding people to PlayStation, but they need to figure this out for the PS6 generation. It cannot go on like this, where you have 2 or 3 games that are actual true first party next gen games carrying an entire console generation. People are done with that. And with how expensive consoles are getting, they're going to stop showing up. It's just not going to be worth it at a certain point to upgrade your hardware if you know that Sony is not going to take advantage of it with first party games. I mean, I hate to say it, but Xbox has figured this out. Now, they bought all the studios to actually do it, but that doesn't matter when you put pen to paper, right? Like, we got Oblivion Remastered, we got Avowed, we got Indiana Jones, we got Forza Horizon 5 on PS5, and they have a bunch of games coming out through the rest of the year. You look at what Sony's got. They've got Death Stranding, and they've got Ghost of Yotei. Ghost of Yotei looks incredible. I think it could be Clair Obscur Expedition 33, but they need to go back to what they were doing in the PS4 generation, which is also in tandem with AAA games, focus on AA games as well. They gave up on it because Japan Studio couldn't figure it out, but that doesn't mean you have to give it up for your entire organization. But we'll talk about a little bit later why I think they're kind of learning the right lesson and at least heading in the right direction. So yeah, the PS6 is coming in 2027, whether we like it or not. But now let's talk about a big exclusive that the PS5 is going to lose, and that's the last game in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. Now, I know Xbox fans have been begging for a port of this game forever. The Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to come to Xbox. There have been rumors from people like Jez Corden coming out all the time. I don't think it's ever going to happen. It's not worth the development cost to release these games on Xbox. Unless you can get it on Game Pass day one, there aren't enough people playing on Xbox consoles to actually support the cost of this game. And knowing that Square Enix is disappointed in the actual sales of it, I mean, just looking at the raw numbers of it, it's literally not worth the development cost to bring it to Xbox, but it is worth it to bring it to the Nintendo Switch. And they are doing a full media blitz tour to advertise that this game runs well on the Nintendo Switch 2. They're talking about how it's great to play it on a handheld. They're running it at full spec, unlike the Steam Deck. I don't think it's so much that the Steam Deck is less powerful than the Switch 2. It's that Square Enix can't make a good PC port to save their life. But when asked about the rest of the trilogy, they said that they built the trilogy in mind to run on the Switch 2 because the hardware has been out there forever. They've had access to it. So that basically means we will get Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the Switch 2 by some time. And I would guess that Final Fantasy VII 3, whatever it's going to be called, will launch on the Switch 2 at the same time. You can put the blame on Square Enix for sure by calling the first game remake. A lot of people probably bought it thinking it was the full package and were kind of pissed when they got to the end and realized it was only 1/3 of the package. They knew what they were doing there. And then when Rebirth came out, it's not serving the correct audience with the action combat. You're not really going to pull in a lot of the people who bought the first game because they're mad, and sequels always do worse. There are very few cases in which sequels do a lot better than the first game. But even when you take that into account, the numbers just weren't there on the Sony system, and there's really no excuse for it because there was nothing coming out around the time of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It should have been a massive game coming out in the beginning of last year, and as someone who put around 70 hours into it, I think it should have done better on PlayStation 5. I don't know why so many people out there chose not to buy it, but it was a big mistake because these exclusives only stay exclusive if we show up to buy them. I understand that $70 games are expensive and you're going to prioritize what you actually really want to play. But in the PS3 and PS4 generation, I took chances all the time. I didn't like Souls games, and then I played Bloodborne. I didn't like simulation racing games, and then I played Gran Turismo 5 and 6, and I was hooked. Hell, I didn't even like turn-based games, and then I played Persona 4 on my PlayStation Vita, and I love every Persona game that I've played since. I know you know this, I just see people upset about it, and I really can't be, right? Like, I understand the economics of all this. I wish more people bought Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because it would have been sweet to keep this whole trilogy exclusive to PlayStation as someone who grew up in the glory days of Square Enix on the PS1 with the original Final Fantasy VII. Whether they like it or not, it is associated with PlayStation and will be forever. It's kind of just not a great scenario when people aren't showing up to buy games and then getting mad when the games are ported to other platforms. As long as they keep it off Xbox, I'm happy at the end of the day. That's all I'm saying. And finally, let's talk about this new studio that Sony's opened up because it's kind of interesting. So Bungie's situation is nuts right now. Destiny is at an all-time low, which makes sense because they did their end game with the final shape, and I didn't play it. I was out of that game because every single story season that they put out was, oh, we need to have empathy for our enemies, and oh, I have depression. It's like, I don't play Destiny to get some moral implications on mental health, guys. Like, I'm playing this game because it's first-person shooter Diablo and I want to kill things. Like, it's really not as deep as they were trying to make the story. Now the fan base is even more pissed because the last year of expansions was not nearly as good as the previous expansions kind of roll out for the year after the expansion comes out. And then they announced the new expansion system, which seems to be better, but everyone's mad because they're doing a Star Wars season that's actually going to take place in a very Star Wars inspired world. The cosmetics they released are not Destiny-ified Star Wars cosmetics. They're just straight up Star Wars skins. Like, you get Kylo Ren, Darth Vader, and General Grievous, and they just are the skins, like straight out of Fortnite. So Bungie has that going on with Destiny 2. Then on the other hand, they have Marathon, which no one seemingly is really that interested in because it's the most boiled down, washed out version of the extraction shooter that already exists. And when you've played hundreds of hours of Destiny, it looks like Destiny reskinned with a new game mode that could have just been in Destiny. So the Destiny players don't want Marathon. Other extraction shooter players aren't going to play Marathon because they already are familiar with extraction shooters. You've got Arc Raiders, which just did its second test and people are begging for that to be released because it was so great and actually compared to other extraction shooters like Hunt Showdown and Escape from Tarkov. So they have a third studio now that's kind of going to fix everything apparently. It's called LFG Studio. It's within Bungie, and they're apparently working on an action team-based multiplayer live service game. Bungie's been working on a game called Gummy Bears for quite some time that's like a lighter touch sort of like multiplayer game, and it seems like that's what this studio is kind of taking over. I think this is the best approach for Sony, to take the live service studio they overpaid for and get them to actually make some live service games, especially when they went around to all the other Sony studios and told them that they should cancel their live service games, which was insane because Bungie can't even run their one live service game and their second one isn't shaping up as well as it needs to keep this studio alive. I'm glad Sony's kind of cracking the whip on them and saying, get some shit figured out, make some actual games. But, you know, Sony has it tough with live service. It's a really hard sort of niche to compete in because you have to be the best of the best at launch. It's as saturated as it's ever been. I hope this works out for Bungie, but as someone who sunk a lot of time into Destiny and saw it go in a direction that really blows, and then see Bungie kind of just keep it on life support forever instead of making Destiny 3, I don't really care anymore. I just like, they've made so many dumb decisions with their main properties over the past decade that it's not really easy to generate a lot of sympathy for where they're at right now. They don't listen to their community. They pay the price for it. That's how it goes. I hope this game works out. I hope Bungie survives long enough to actually get some more games out after Marathon. I am worried for them after seeing Marathon gameplay. It just doesn't look like a good extraction shooter as someone who plays a lot of these style of games. I think it'll do decent at launch on console, but then the biggest problem is there's not enough content there. There's only 3 maps. Apparently they have a 4th one that's going to launch after the game. This game needs to be delayed, and they need to have as much content as possible at launch and stop with their bullshit fake drip feeding. It's like crazy that they have this stuff ready and then they just drip feed it out to keep you hooked as long as possible. If your game is good enough at launch, it will keep people hooked without the drip fed content. Having drip fed content before launch just is you admitting that your game is not strong enough to actually keep people hooked. And I think that's the core problem that Bungie needs to address. There you go. I haven't done a classic Jimmy rant in a while. I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, guys, as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.